بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد أي حسبوا أن لن يقدر عليه أحد يقول أهلكت مالا لبد أي حسبوا أي يحسبوا أن لم يروا أحد ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين فلا اقتحم العقبة وما أدراك ما العقبة فك رقبة أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا متربة ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة أولئك أصحاب الميمنة والذين كفروا بآياتنا هم أصحاب المشأمة عليهم نار مؤصدة صدق الله العلي العظيم. So if I can share my screen, let me see.
Ji, we can see now.
Can you see my screen?
Ji, Bismillah.
Okay, Bismillah. Just a second. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the surah that I've been asked to discuss today is surah number 90 Al-Balad, which is the 90th surah of the Quran. And just by way of introductory comments, most commentators consider surah to be revealed in Makkah, and it consists of 20 verses. In sort of an outline, it reminds people of the human condition of enduring hardship and toil in the life of this world. By the way, before I kind of go launch into the surah, I just forgot to say one thing, which is that the main kind of translations I've used in my slides and in my research are three main ones. One is a recent translation of Al-Mizan from Allama Tabataba'i's volume of Quranic tafsir. I've used the Study Quran, which I think many of you are familiar with, and also Mir Ahmad Ali's translation, which is quite a famous one that most people have in their homes. So, so the surah, as I said, has got 20 verses. It reminds people of the human condition of enduring hardship, and there's a verse in the surah about that. And we all know from our own experiences that life is a series of ups and downs. We find that there is no pure comfort. You know, as other surahs in the Quran says, does mankind suppose that they will be left alone if they say they believe? Surah Ankabut mein, I think this verse is there. Okay, do you think you'll be left alone if you say that I believe? You will be tested, and all of us will be tested, and we know that we are being tested. Surah Mulk also says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created death and life that he may try us, to check or to establish who is the most virtuous, who is the best in conduct. So in a sense, one of the messages of this surah is that life itself is a long examination, where we have to write the exam paper and we have to provide the answers. So there are three main things that I derive from these surahs that one needs to do in order to be successful. One, we need to perform all the divine obligations, all the wajibat, persevere with obedience to God, with his commands, with his laws, and obviously refrain from going against any of his laws. So combined with those wajibat and avoiding haram and doing everything halal, one should also strive to spread out compassion to those who are afflicted by the problems of life, the yatim, the needy, the poor, which in a sense is serving the creation of God. So if one takes these actions, he will avoid being among the people, which is towards the end of the surah, people who will be given their deeds in their right hand. Sorry, people of misfortune will be given their deeds in the left hand and doomed to hell. So now we need to just go through the surah in more detail. Now there are four main themes which are grouped into verses 1 to 4, 5 to 11, 12 to 17, and 18 to 20. So the surah begins in the first four verses with two oaths that then lead into a discussion of the human condition. Verses 5 to 11 reproach the human being for failing to realize the nature of their condition and failing to put their faculties, their God-given faculties, and their possessions, whether it's their wealth, whether it's their knowledge, their skills, to proper use, to help others. Verses 12 to 17 then move on to give the instructions as to how they should act. And then the last three verses, 18 to 20, conclude with a contrast between the successful people, the companions of the right, and the ones who failed, the companions of the left. So verse number 1 says, I swear by this town. Some say, I swear by this city. The most exegetes have said that this town is Makkah. That's supported by 2 points. As I said earlier, the surah was revealed in Makkah. And verse 3 of the surah, which is coming up, says, by a father and what he begot. And again, most commentators said it refers to Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail, who built the town of Makkah. So on those two bases, I swear by this town implies I swear by this town of Makkah. And it continues in the next verse, as you reside in this town. So this continues from the first verse. God is saying, I swear by this town while you are a resident of it. Who is the resident of it? The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is saying is that Makkah is honored because of the Prophet's residence and presence. You see, the Quraysh used to hold Makkah in honor. But in the Prophet's first 40 years, they dishonored him. Therefore, God is saying that I swear by this town only because you reside in this town. Now, another possibility is that given that this surah was revealed in Makkah, another possibility is that God is giving the Prophet a premonition of his future conquest of Makkah to console him during his persecution in the city by saying, and you shall be, which is the next verse coming up, and you shall be unrestricted in this town, free to do as you wish. Because what happened after the conquest of Makkah was that the Holy Prophet was unique in being given the exclusive privilege to use force to punish the disbelievers, to dispense justice. And the Prophet is reported to have said that this privilege was not made lawful to anyone before him. Makkah was a place where even murderers apparently were not arrested in previous times. It was so honored. So the Prophet said that this privilege of using force, of punishing and dispensing justice was not made lawful for anyone before me and shall not be lawful for anyone after me. And even for me, it was lawful only for an hour of a day. The third verse says, and by the begetter and what he begat. Now, this is another oath. The object of the oath here is a father and what he begat, whilst the object in the first verse was the town. So again, this makes Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam as the clear candidates for this verse. Certainly, according to Allama Tabatabai, he takes the view that Hazrat Ibrahim and Ismail is what's meant here, because they were the two individuals who built the city of Makkah and raised the house of God, the Kaaba, which is also mentioned in a verse of Surah Baqarah, when Abraham and Ishmael with him raised up the foundations of the house. And also it was Hazrat Ibrahim who asked God to make Makkah a secure town. In the surah by his name, he says, my Lord, make this city a sanctuary. I mean, there are some other interpretations of this verse. Some commentators say the begetter and what he begat is a reference to Adam alayhi salam and his progeny, which will obviously include all of us. And there's another sort of metaphorical interpretation which states that the begetter is the Prophet, and that which he begat is his community, the community of Muslims. Some people also read this as a reference to the Prophet's descent from Hazrat Ibrahim through Hazrat Ismail. Hazrat Ismail is usually considered the father of Arabs. So overall, these three verses swear by the holy Makkah, the city, by the Prophet who resided there, and by Hazrat Ibrahim and Ismail who built it. So it all centers around the city of Makkah. Now this, certainly we created man in travail, kabad. Kabad means hardship, toiling, exhaustion. So the reference is that right from the time that we are carried in our mother's wombs to our birth, to the challenges that we face at the different stages of our life, earning a living, etc., right up to the point of our death, life is full of ups and downs. People seek peace of mind, but in this world, God is saying he has created man to toil and face challenges. Again, part of our examination. But in the Quran, it also says, of course, that there is one activity that puts hearts at rest. And I know you're all aware of this famous verse about how hearts are at rest through the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through his remembrance. Tatma'innal khulub is through the remembrance. The Prophet was apparently once asked by his companions, or once asked his companions, shall I tell you about the best of all deeds, the best act of piety in the eyes of your Lord, which will elevate your status in the Akhirah, and which carries more virtue than the spending of gold and silver in the service of God, or taking part in jihad? The companion said, what is that deed? He said, it's the remembrance of God. The remembrance of God is not just zikr, I think it's also being mindful of God at all times. Aiming to move your nafs towards what was presented by Haider in his last week's presentation on towards the nafsil mutmainna, getting towards that where you're in complete control of your desires. But coming back to this verse, the difficulties and mental worries everyone has to deal with, and not to mention knowing at the back of our mind that we'll be held to account for everything that we did in this life. And as part of the toil and the hardships in this life is the tragedies and natural disasters which catch people off guard. And I don't need to tell you what all of us have been going through for the last 10 months or so with this pandemic, which came completely out of the blue. The fifth verse talks about, does he suppose that no one ever has power over him? So again, God is saying he is in control, he is in charge. One never achieves what one desires fully. Our wishes and our plans are limited, are restricted. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has decided to give us a level of free will, a level of choice. But we must not forget that it's all from Him. And He has only given us this choice, this free will, is because He's appointed us as His vicegerent, His representative on earth. And in order to be His representative, we needed to have a level of free will, a level of choice. But the ultimate control is in His hands. And He is watching us. And although He allows people some respite, Saddam Hussein was allowed to commit lots of nasty things, but eventually he was overpowered. So therefore, man should not imagine that there is none over him to control and take account of his motives and deeds. We talk about a lot in Islamic context about niyat. So the niyat is just as important as the deed itself. And as I said, verse 14 of Surah Al-Fajr says, "Thy Lord is watchful." So we are accountable for all our actions. Sixth ayah says, He says, "I have squandered immense wealth." Now, in the context of this verse, it apparently refers to a specific incident. Some say to a man called Harith ibn Amir, who was advised by the Prophet to give to charity as a compensation for his sins. And he then complained that he had lost all his wealth in atoning for his sins since he converted to Islam. Problem is that sometimes the wealthy can be deluded by their wealth. They sometimes perhaps don't appreciate that God can, in this case, he didn't understand the spiritual value of his payments and thought he had squandered his wealth. It also implies both that people will be taken to account for how they have spent their wealth and also for how they acquired it, no matter how charitable somebody is. Verse 7 says, "Does he suppose that no one sees him?" So this is in answer to the previous verse where Harith ibn Amir said, "I have squandered my wealth." God is saying that God is not ignorant or heedless of what people are doing. And as I just said, it raises the question, do people think that God will not ask how they obtained their wealth and how they spent it? So moving on quickly, I think I'm slightly need to go faster. The next two verses, "Have we not made for him 2 eyes, a tongue, and 2 lips?" Both these verses are mentioning the gifts from God. There are many more, but here there are just 2 of them are mentioned: the faculty of vision and our tongue and 2 lips, enabling us to speak and communicate. Now, verse number 10, "And shown him the 2 paths of good and evil." So combined with the previous verses about Allah Ta'ala giving him the gift of the sight and gift of the lips to communicate, they provide I think, supporting evidence for verse number 7, which says, does he suppose that no one sees him? Because without all these gifts from God, without Allah Ta'ala showing him the two paths of good and evil, this is within our fitrah. This is like a inborn guidance from God, already programmed within us to know the difference between right and wrong. In fact, without this inborn guidance, the external guidance from the Prophet would not be helpful. So to believe the Prophet and the Quranic text, we have been given this internal power of reason and discernment. In a hadith from our seventh Imam, it's been called the inner prophet. So this verse is comparable to a one in Surah Shams, where it says, by the soul and what fashioned it, then inspired it with this discernment, this power to distinguish between right and wrong, its virtues and its vices. Yet he has not assailed the steep pass, and what will apprise thee of the steep pass? The word assail is iqtahama, meaning to do something with intensity, rapidly, forcefully. And aqaba means a steep incline that is difficult to pass. So what's meant here is that those who have fully or failed to fully engage in religious duties and have only partially fulfilled them. So, for example, just distributing wealth, in a sense, is for somebody who's wealthy, is an easy part if somebody has enough wealth. But to give away wealth when you need it yourself is far more difficult. So the steep pass refers to this uphill task, the kind of striving of overcoming against one's desires, against one's soul, fighting one's lower desires, which incite us towards haram. It's also a metaphorical reference to distributing wealth in the manner mentioned in the 3 verses. So the next 3 verses actually go on to say that giving of wealth should then be combined with the freeing of a slave, or giving food at a time of famine to an orphan near of kin, or to a dust-ridden needy. So those are the conditions. Now, of course, freeing a slave doesn't apply in our time, but at that time it was considered more praiseworthy than giving charity, because that comes at the top of the list. And as I said earlier, giving wealth is more difficult for the donor in times of need. This famous verse from Surah Insan, which was revealed in honor of the Ahl Bayt, and we all know the story of how on 3 successive nights, Imam Ali, Bibi Fatima, Imam Hassan ibn Imam Hussain, and the family gave away their iftar, their food, to the poor, to the needy, and give food despite loving it to the indigent, the orphan, and the captive. The next priority after fleeing a slave is to feed an orphan from one's relatives, followed by one who has no home other than dust, the dust-ridden needy. While being one of those who have faith and who enjoin one another to patience and who enjoin one another to compassion. So, very clear verse. It's saying the condition for acceptance of the deeds in these last few verses, spending your wealth, feeding the orphan, etc., is belief in God. Surah Tawbah says, and nothing prevented their spending from being accepted from them, except that they disbelieved in God and in his messenger, and only came to prayer lazily, and only spend reluctantly. So faith is the most important criteria. And then those who enjoin one another to patience, those who prompt each other to be obedient to God, and then who show mercy to those who are afflicted. I think in the last 3 verses, having said the importance of faith, the importance of patience, the importance of compassion, and of course, sincerity is very important. Ikhlas is very important in all of those. The last 3 ayat then talk about those are the people of good fortune. And those who disbelieve in our signs, they are the people of misfortune, and upon them will be a close fire. So who are these those? Those are the people who assail these steep paths, who conquer their desires. Those who have faith, those who enjoin one another to patience and compassion. And they are described in Surah Waqi'ah as being given their books in their right hand. They will be blessed and they will be in a state of bliss. And those who disbelieve in our signs. Now our signs include the natural world and of course the internal signs, the power of reason, the power of ability to distinguish between right and wrong. I think in Surah Hujurat, Allah Ta'ala says, we have shown them our signs on the horizon and within themselves until they know it is the truth. And of course, the Quranic ayat, they are also signs. The Quranic verses are signs in themselves. So disbelief in these signs means you're defying God. You're in kufr. And those people will be given their book of deeds in their left hand. They will be committed to the hellfire, which will encompass them. So I think I've already sort of gone 5 minutes over. I'll just conclude with a prayer. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we navigate our lives mindful of God, mindful of his presence, his closeness. He's closer to us than our jugular vein, obeying his laws, which are for our benefit, because God is needless, Allahus Samad. Avoid haram by purifying our nafs through worship and prayer. Salat keeps us away from sin and indecency. And inshallah, we are given our book of deeds by the sadaqah of 14 Masumeen in our right hands. Ameen. Shaukat Bhai, over to you. Shaukat Bhai there?
I think उनका network नहीं है.
No, he's there.
He is there, but his mic is off, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Azharbai, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Shaukat Bhai.
Mashallah, I think presentation after presentation, we are setting higher standards for the people to come. Very well presented. In the beginning, I was a bit worried at the speed at which you were moving, but I think you made up by the end of.
I know it's always a challenge, Shaukat Bhai, but there was a few more material. I had to edit it as I went through. With each of these Quranic verses, there is so much to be said. There are short verses, but they have so much meaning in them.
Exactly. Let me start the question session. Nakhi Bhai, please. Nahma, you can unmute yourself. Nahma, are you there? Okay, let's go to the next one. Abdullah Bhai.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाह।
वालेकुम सलाम।
अजहर भाई, आपने इतना छोटा सा सूरा इतना बड़ा कर दिया है कि आई थिंक
माशाल्लाह।
हर चीज समा दी है उसमें, और जो रह गया है वो शौकत भाई समा देंगे। तो आई थिंक आई विल जस्ट लिसन टू द स्कॉलर्स। थैंक यू।
Great. Shujat Bhai.
Assalamu alaikum, Azhar Bhai. I just loved it. So the way you interpret the verses is really amazing. Thank you so much for all the efforts. I have no questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Haider, please.
जी अजहर भाई माशाल्लाह वंस अगेन आपको तो मालूम है मैं आपकी बहुत अच्छा माशाल्लाह आहिस्ता आहिस्ता सलीके से जिस तरीके से आपने प्रेजेंट किया है इसका
Thank you. Thank you, Haider.
मतलब ये जाहिर होता है कि आपने माशाल्लाह काफी प्रिपरेशन किया। I've got one little question for you. In the right in the beginning, you were explaining for hardship and the trials. You mentioned we have to provide the answers, and you left that. And so इसको थोड़ा सा मुझे समझाएंगे कि what answer we have to provide. I know we have to be pious, and but you mentioned we have to provide the answer, and you haven't explained about it. So if you have anything on this, right in the beginning you said.
Was that in the context of the?
No, in the beginning when we were explaining about the surah,
Right.
you were explaining about the hardship and the trials, and you mentioned we have to provide the answers, and you left that and move on. So if you have the study of that, for what answers Allah is expecting from it.
Otherwise, talking about ayat number 6, 7, 8.
Achha, ayat number 6, 7, 8. I think I was maybe talking about the accountability that we all have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, He's watching us. He's overseeing us.
Okay.
He, you know, I think if He has given us eyes for us to see, do you think the giver of the eye is not aware of, you know, what we are doing?
Okay.
Yeah. The one who has given us the power to talk and the power to speak, is He not aware of what we are saying? You know, all these faculties have come from Him, and insan sometimes forget that all of that is being monitored. So we will be answerable for how we use our eyes, how we use our ears, our tongue, you know, all the faculties, all the things that were given to us. We are going to be answerable. Whether we used it for the right purpose or we didn't use it for the right purpose. Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
That's what
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Ahmed, please. Ahmed, are you there?
जी शौकत भाई अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
जी
माशाल्लाह very well presented. दो क्वेश्चन मेरे पास। Question number 1 is this combination of eye and lips and tongue has been mentioned. Why are the ears not mentioned? Like, even ear is something very important, right?
It is, yeah, it is. I mean, it is not mentioned in this surah, but ears and hearts are mentioned many times. I mean, ear, for example, I think is mentioned in Surah Mulk, or perhaps Surah Muzammil. I can't remember. But the other organs are mentioned, but not in this surah.
Yeah, but any specific reason why the ear is not as relevant as the eye and the tongue and the lips?
I mean, I think in the context of this surah, because if you see the verse prior to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about the eyes, verse number 7 says, does he suppose that no one sees him? So it's in a very specific context that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, ke, does man suppose no one sees him? So in the context of that, he's then saying, did we not make for him 2 eyes? Which is what I was just saying to Heather. If he has made us, if he has given us the 2 eyes, then how can we ever forget that he is seeing us? If he's given us the instrument of seeing, of visibility.
But similarly, he's mentioned the tongue and the lips. So equally relevant would be the ears, because the tongue and the lips would be combining to speak, and the ears would be used to listening. But anyway, so the other question I have is the steep path,
Yes.
Aqaba,
Yes.
why is it called so as such?
Why is it?
Why is it called the steep path? Why is the steep path called the steep path?
I think that is, as I understand it, Ahmad, to illustrate the difficulty. Going uphill or going through a narrow path is usually difficult than going on a flat ground on a wide path. So I think it's a metaphor for indicating how hard it is to control your desires, how hard it is to always avoid the haram, how hard it is to struggle against your nafs. That's how I understand it, the steep path. I think, in fact, when I was reading about this, even Nabi Isa apparently had referred to instead of steep path, he'd used the word a narrow path as being more difficult than a wider ground. So I think they're both saying the same point about the difficulty of controlling your nafs, about controlling your desires, and staying on the right path.
Thank you very much, Azhar bhai. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Ahmed. Rizwan, please.
Assalamu alaikum, Azhar bhai.
Wa alaikum salam.
MashaAllah, Azhar bhai, one more. I've really enjoyed listening to you. Very nice, very specific, and very
Thank
brief
you.
and very clear. It was, I think, मुझे ऐसा लग रहा था कि बस मैं सुनता ही जाऊं, So it was,
Thank you,
even
Rizwan.
though मैं चाय का पानी चढ़ा लिया था, चाय पिया नहीं, बनाने नहीं गया. It was so indulging, So,
Thank you.
I've got only one thing, Azhar bhai. एक आप थोड़ा सा elaborate, if you can do it for me, it would be very good. I'm just on my laptop and I was looking at this. ये जो लोग जो कह रहे हैं कि हमने तो बहुत पैसा खैरात कर दिया है, यानी we have already spent. आपने जो example दिया है, so I was reading out the tafsir here. It says that आपने, I think you mentioned also, niyat is very important. Allah Ta'ala is saying in this tafsir, यहाँ पे जो लिखे हैं, वो इस तरीके से point out कर रहे हैं कि लोग कुछ दिखाने के लिए करते हैं, अल्लाह उनकी नियतों को जानता है. So I mean, if you can elaborate a little bit, how?
I mean, my understanding is, we've heard about this before. When you do charity, your right hand should know what your left hand is doing, for example. And sometimes if you're doing charity for the sake of publicity, for being known, then effectively your reward has been given there and then. Allah might say to you, okay, if you did it for that purpose, just to be seen as somebody generous, somebody a philanthropist, if you've done it for publicity, then that's your reward. Don't expect anything else from me. That also, I think, is almost trying to show an attitude that wealth belongs to you. I think we need to understand that everything we have, from our, as I said, from our faculties, from our wealth, from any possession that we have, is all a blessing from Allah. Nothing actually belongs to us. So the last thing one needs to think about giving charity is, this is from me. one needs to actually be thankful that you've been given the opportunity to give something. And it's all Allah's, and you're not doing anybody any favors by distributing something that Allah has given you. So the attitude should be, Allah Ta'ala has blessed me and I'm sharing some of that blessings with His creation. I'm only a conduit. I'm just a zariya, passing it on.
Perfect, Azhar bhai. And this goes with the hadith you mentioned about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, कि जिसके अंदर रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम फरमाते हैं कि जंग और जिहाद और सबसे बड़ी चीज वो है कि तुम अल्लाह को याद करते जाओ. तो once you remember Allah, I think आप जैसे बोल रहे हैं, इंसान अगर ये महसूस करे उसके पास जो कुछ भी है सारा कुछ अल्लाह का ही है, तो वो हदीस के ऊपर बहुत अच्छा जा रहा हो. You can reflect. It matches with that. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Thanks a lot. Jabbar, please.
Assalamu alaikum, Azhar bhai. Very crisp and concise presentation. I really loved it, like everyone else. And I apologize for the starting. I think I had misplaced my Bluetooth mic, and then I realized. I have a very simple question. It's mostly not with thing, but mostly with the English translation, I guess. Everywhere in Quran we see the translation coming up to right hand and left hand, and over time we have understood that it refers to the good things and bad things. But what exactly is right hand? Is there any connotation in Arabic to say right hand and left hand? I mean, the translators could have clearly said people who do good and people who do bad, but very consistently across all the translations, it says right hand and left hand apart from any other word. So is there a reason for that?
I think Allama Tabatabai translates the companion of the right as people of misfortune. He uses the word misfortune rather than the right hand. Sorry, the left hand. People who are of the left hand are the one who are misfortune or unfortunate. And the ones, I think the right and the left comes from Surah Waqi'ah, Jabbar. Maybe, I mean, I'm not an expert in Arabic, but perhaps Shaukat Bhai might be able to say if there are other translations. But I don't know, there is this kind of underlying theme of the right hand being somehow superior to the left hand. अपने culture में भी है ना generally कि आपका सीधा हाथ is that. But I don't know whether that explains it, but maybe the Arabic leads towards that. But it's interesting, Allama Tabari talks about misfortune and fortune rather than right and left.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jabbar. Shakib Bhai, please.
Assalamualaikum Azhar bhai. बहुत अच्छा प्रेजेंटेशन था. मैं बेगैरती में एक छोटा सा सवाल करना चाहूँगा.
Please do.
वो you said somewhere that Rasul Khuda has got privileges in Makkah which no one else has.
Yes.
But you said it's only lawful for me only for an hour a day. Where does that come from, and why is it just 1 hour, and which hour?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I raise my hands that was in the study Quran, and it must be from a hadith. But I apart from the study Quran as the source, I can try and find out, I guess, but I haven't gone any further back as to where the original source was. You've seen the study Quran, have you? This Hussein Nasr's book?
No, I haven't actually. I will look into it.
So this is Professor Hussein Nasr, who you may have heard of. He did a 10-year project to compile the study Quran using the tafsir of 41 Mufassirun, 41 exegetes, Sunni and Shia, and he and some of his colleagues at George Washington University and some of the other American universities compiled this. because apparently there is a similar, the study Bible, which had been produced some years ago. So he took on this project of, क्योंकि usually हमारे पास, each Quranic tafsir tends to be an individual, whether it's Mir Ahmad Ali, whether it's Allama Tabatabai, Tabarasi, Majma' al-Bayan, which is another one, Agha Poya. So these are individual translations and tafsirs, but the study Quran is unique in the sense that it compiles, or it brings in inputs from 41 different ones. It's quoted in there.
So do you think this makes it reliable, that Rasulullah only had that privilege for an hour a day?
Well, I mean, I think what we do know is that since I referred to Hazrat Ibrahim's prayer to make Makkah a sanctuary for forever and ever. So the city, the Makkah was always a very honored place, and I think it also says in what I read, murderers were not prosecuted there, and people were generally protected. So it does seem to suggest that this exclusivity that was given to the Prophet to administer justice, to punish, to kill, to do whatever he wanted, was only given as an exclusive thing to the Prophet himself. But that sentence actually did raise my eyebrows as well. But I thought, let's put it in and see whether somebody raises a question. And you did.
Okay.
But we'll try and find out. Maybe Shaukat Bhai might know. I don't know. But
thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Sheikh Bhai. Abidar, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Another
Another great presentation, Nazar Bhai. MashaAllah, very well done. I think most of the questions we have, just a very, very brief clarification, if you can please help me. In the early ayats of this surah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swear, he said, I swear by the throne as you reside in this town, and then followed by immediately by the Father and him who he begot. So, and you said here the references for the Rasulullah that he resided in the
Rinko?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, just say the last sentence again, please.
Yeah, so you clarified that you said the second ayat by the Father, that as you reside in this town refers to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But then the third ayat further clarifies his father and him. So even Janab Ibrahim, Hazrat Ibrahim also resided in Makkah. So can this not also be related to Hazrat Ibrahim?
No, I said initially the begetter and the begat, the father and the son, most likely refers to Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail.
Yeah. I got that.
Then I said there are some alternative interpretations.
No, I'm more talking about the second ayat, that before the father and the son, it says, as you reside in this town.
As you reside, as you reside.
So, and you referred this to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, isn't it?
Yes.
So my question was, even Janab Ibrahim, Hazrat Ibrahim also resided there and his son. So can this not also be referred to him? How can we say it's related to Rasulullah only?
Acha. Okay. I get your question. Well, I mean, the background of the surah and the fact that it was revealed to the Prophet. So it's saying while you reside in this city. So it's directly referring.
Oh, so it's directly addressed to Prophet.
Addressed to the Prophet, yeah. So I mean, I think referring it to Abraham will be stretching it.
Okay. I just want a clarification on that. Is it that it can it be also attributed to Janab Ibrahim, or just wondering? No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Irshad, please.
Assalamu alaikum, Azhar Bhai. Thank you very much for the presentation. I just have a kind of a quick clarification, and this is, the ayat first talks about the gifts, and then it talks about uphill road, and then it goes on with 13, 14, and 15, talking about what, i.e., people who have money and so on and so forth could have done.
Yes.
And one of the things is freeing of a slave. Within that, did you find any hadiths where Islam or Quran kind of bans it? Because freeing of slaves is in Quran, but it seems that Islam never took a stance to totally or outrightly ban slavery. So did you find anything on that?
Not specifically, no. I think we know there are things about how to treat slaves, and we have precedents of how Lady Fiza was treated, for example, in the houses of Imam Ali. But actually banning slavery, I think I haven't come across.
Yeah, because I found a lot of rights about a slave, but because
but I
Quran
think
is till the end of time, this kind of slavery.
Yeah,
I found.
I mean, I think generally things in the Quran are tend to be for gradual change, unless it's something like alcohol. Even alcohol, if you look at how the Quranic ayats came, initially it said, there is some good in it and then some bad. Then it said, don't come into a state of prayer when you're intoxicated. And then third time it said, well, don't drink at all.
Yeah.
So there is a gradual thing to it. So when it comes to slavery, clearly it was very ingrained in society of the time.
Yeah.
And I think the implication is at every opportunity to free a slave, at every opportunity to treat them,
one of the greatest deeds is to free a slave. But I think I find it not issue. It's our ignorance. I would say my ignorance. The fact that you gave a good example of alcohol, where it gradually became haram.
Yeah,
I don't see the same pattern with slavery, which is very different, because now it has changed the shape. Slavery still exists.
Of course it does.
Changed the shape of how slavery is. So quite interesting, but I didn't find it. So I thought you may have found something.
Not an outright ban. No, I didn't find any outright ban.
The other thing, sorry, one more question. It's not a question. Sure. Maybe you and Shaukat Bhai may be able to answer. We talk about rich people and trying to give through right hand and left hand and so on and so forth. How would I phrase this question? So in our community, so I'm coming directly to our community over here. What I have seen is we tend to put our names on any good deed that we do, and you kind of clarified that it's clear that if you do put your name to that deed, that is what your reward is, nothing else. So how is that applicable to majalises, where they tend to put their name either through giving you special food, or majlis jo hai, majlis jaake jo hai, it becomes Halim ki majlis. Not Imam Hussein's majlis, becomes Halim ki majlis. At the same time, the sponsors insist on only giving money for doing a majlis if we, a center, put their name on it, or else they will shy away from it. So how does that relate to, and in the reward we were talking about, where is the reward in that? The fact that yes, the intention is more important, and we all know. So when you're giving money away or doing a majlis, is it important, or is it just mentally that we are so much world that, oh, I have to give my marhumin's name or else that sawab would not go to them? And that's the thinking. And you have to put the names on, or else they go all the way to not sponsor it. So I might not have the majlis at all. So that's what it is. So I'm trying to highlight, how do we, what's your thought on it? And I would like
is that in the context of organizing majalis in the center like Al Noor?
Yeah, anyway,
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I was saying. I was encapsulating the whole community here, not just that. I mean, I have seen this consistent, and I call it a plague within our community, the way that we all think about. And you gave a very good example to say Allah has already kind of saying that if you say, if you're giving money to get fame or your name to be known, and that is the only reward. That should be still applicable for sponsoring a majlis or doing a majlis for your marhumins.
No, it's a good point. I mean, I think.
With due respect, maybe I'll take it over when my turn will come.
Okay, Shaukat Bhai, you handle it. Okay. Thank you.
That's it for me, Shaukat Bhai.
Okay, thanks.
Are you ready now?
Yeah, Shaukat Bhai, yes, thank you. I'm in the car, but I think inshallah hope the signal is okay. Assalamu alaikum, Abu, mashallah.
Wa alaikum salam. Were you able to listen?
Yeah, you did a PowerPoint, so I'm here. I am in the car. Hopefully, signal is looking okay. Thank you for the presentation. Wonderful. Just one thought. I mean, one question, I suppose. You know, this surah is talking a lot about how man is created in toil and how much suffering we have to go through, physical, mental, and and we have to face many challenges. But the community, I think, the way the community Muslim perceives it is that if you get a challenge or you get a tragedy, that you've done something wrong in your life. Something bad has happened to you, or some challenge, or some illness, or some sort of misfortune, whatever happens, people start blaming themselves or blaming their own actions and all that. Yet, I think we forget that, this is potentially could be a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that correlation between Allah's testing and our ability to comprehend a challenge, I think needs to be, I don't know what your thoughts are on that how do people perceive those challenges in life, and why don't they think that this could be potentially a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, therefore the Imams went through the biggest test of all, and yet as we simple human beings can't go through simple test. So the Imams, na'uzubillah, they didn't do anything wrong, yet they went through the most difficult time. I think Prophet, peace be upon him, had 13 assassination attempts on his life. That was that was a very how he was persecuted left, right, and center. So yet any small thing happens, we say, oh my God, I've done something wrong in my life. It's just a complete misconception. Thank you.
That I think is probably a cultural thing in India and so on, where they have this theory of karma. What you do, or but that doesn't make any sense from an Islamic point of view, because the day of judgment is when accountability will happen. I think in this life, as you say, difficulties are also part of the test. And the attitude should always be of gratefulness, because each test is an opportunity to show to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala your patience, your tawakkul, your trust in Allah. And try and confront that challenge as best as you can through your own efforts, through du'as, through prayers, and of course, through sadaqat, etc. So
I think
whether you get a blessing or whether you get a difficulty, in both situations, we just need to be grateful.
When you get a blessing,
sorry, Ali, go on.
When you get a blessing, be grateful. When you get a test, be patient. That's in summary.
Well, not quite, because
don't be proud of your blessing. But that's what I meant to say.
Exactly. Means last surah we discussed the same. Exactly. Don't think that you are near to God when there is a blessing. and don't think that you have been discarded by God when some musibat has come on you. तो ये exactly same wordings में last सूरह में हम लोगों ने discuss किया है.
जी.
Thank you.
Thank you, bhai. Nakhi bhai, just want to know if you are back. Nakhi bhai.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum, Azhar bhai. Excellent. As I was expecting it from you.
Shukriya, bahut shukriya, Nakhi bhai.
Very well. Again, I have a question about hardships, verse number 4, in a different context.
हाँ, बोलिए.
If someone has not faced hardships so far in his life, and his life has been gone very smooth, does it mean that Allah has Allah has not put him on trial and Allah is not happy with him? Because I'm a little worried about it, that I have not faced any.
I'm just wondering who this individual could be, because I haven't come across him.
Keep saying Shukr Alhamdulillah.
See, Alhamdulillah, small things here and there come in life, but not real big hardships.
I think
and there could be many people like that, Nazar bhai. I'm talking about believers, not disbelievers.
Ji.
So
are you saying that they don't fit this ayat, that they don't have any difficulty, they don't have any hardships?
No. It's not that. I don't mean that. I don't mean that. Because all the verses of Quran may not be applicable to everybody, right?
That's right.
Some may be applicable to some and some may not be. But my question was that if you are not put on hardship, what should we conclude, that God has left you and then he will take you on the doomsday?
पूरे पैसे निकाल के हेल्पिंग हैंड्स में दे दीजिए, खुद ब खुद मुश्किल आती है आपके ऊपर.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it is actually something to ponder about, that if your life is going very smoothly, maybe the attitude should be, well, I go and try and help others who are in difficulty.
Beshak.
Inshallah. I think that's probably the best thing to do.
Inshallah, but that will not lead to hardship. Helping others will give you a lot of pleasure.
No, exactly. But it will make you appreciate what hardship is like, seeing it in other people.
अजहर भाई का बोलना ये है कि खाली हेल्पिंग हैंड्स से हेल्प मत कीजिए, यहाँ बैठकर काम भी करिए. आपको मालूम होगा कि कितने मुश्किल लोग आते हैं अपने मुश्किल मसलों को लेकर. Then only you realize what.
Yeah, correct. Shaukat bhai, that means I have to join helping hands.
but I think, Nakhi bhai, it's also an issue about attitude, and again, some people might have this attitude, which is again a God-given thing. Okay, they tend to make light of their problems. They think, "Arey, ye koi chota masla hai, koi badi baat nahi hai. I'll deal with it." So it's down to your attitude as well, whether you make your problems bigger or smaller.
Yeah,
but that attitude is also a gift from God. वो चीज भी आपको अल्लाह ताला ने दिया है.
Absolutely.
नखी भाई, आपके वालिद वालदा जिंदा हैं?
जी?
आपके वालिद और वालदा जिंदा हैं?
जी नहीं है.
बस उनका चले जाना भी एक बहुत बड़ा जो है इम्तिहान है आपके लिए, कि आपके वालिद वालिदैन ने बोल दिया. दुआ करें, आप उनकी रहमत के लिए दुआ करें. उनका चले जाना, आपको उसका अफसोस नहीं है कि आपके वालिद वालदा नहीं है आपके साथ? इतना बड़ा इम्तिहान है.
जी हाँ, बिल्कुल. अफसोस तो है, लेकिन आई एम लिटिल सेटिस्फाइड द वे दे हैव स्पेंट देयर लाइफ. आई नो.
माशाल्लाह.
चलिए ठीक है.
अल्लाह का शुक्र करते रहना है कि
let's go quickly to the input round, because we have all the 13 participants and I have to give time to them. I will once again start with Nakhi bhai, since actually your name was first on my list. Nakhi, this is the input round. You wish to add something more to the surah?
अच्छा, मुझसे पूछ रहे हैं आप शौकत भाई?
पूछ रहा नहीं, आपको बोलना है क्या?
जी हाँ है कुछ बोलने का.
फरमाइए.
It's an excellent surah, and so many, at least 5 or 6 basic guidance from Allah have been given here. I don't want to go into details, except the same verse number 4. I would like to add some sayings of Prophet and our Imam. Prophet said, the world is not trouble-free for a believer. How can it be when it is his prison and his trial? That's what Prophet said. Imam Ali said, the bitterness of this world is sweetness of the hereafter, and vice versa. The wealth of this world is poverty in the hereafter. So Allah says that don't get disheartened when you face problems. You have to face with patience. You have to, as Azarbhai said, engage in Allah ka zikr, be patient and be thankful in whatever way you have, whether you have hardships or whether you are in good times. You have to be thankful, because each and every trial is for your benefit only. So that's one. And then this verse number 8 and 9 about the eyes and tongue. I have read in one of the verses that it is so beautiful that it talks of tongue and the lips. Now, and then the eyes, of course, it's not talking of eyelids here, but in the commentary I have read that if eyes are seeing some unlawful things, the eyelids are the guard for it. They close. Similarly, if tongue is engaged in something wrong, the lips closes it. So the lips and the eyelids, they are controlling factors if the eyes and tongues are misused. Okay, then I think the rest of things are very nicely covered. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot. I think it partially answers to Ahmed's question, but let's see forward. Abdullah bhai.
जी शौकत भाई, अस्सलाम वालेकुम अगेन. जैसे कि आप सबको पता है, you know, because Quranic language is so elegant कि इस पे आप जिस डायमेंशन से भी आप देखना चाहें, आप इसको ब्रॉडर कर सकते हैं अंडरस्टैंडिंग को. बट आज मुझे लगता है कि मैं आप जैसे स्कॉलर्स को सुनूं सिर्फ और एंजॉय करूं उनका और अपनी नॉलेज में इजाफा करूं. थैंक यू सो मच.
Thanks a lot. So kind of you. Shujat bhai, please.
Great. Thank you, Shaukat bhai. I would like to share my understanding from today's discussion. So I learned 3 things. A great presentation. So man, though created in misery, yet boasts of his richness. And second point is captives to be freed and the poor or orphan to be fed. And the third thing what I learned is here there is a description of companions of right and left hand. So these are the 3 things which I learned today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Ali bhai, are you ready?
Ali bhai driving?
Yeah. No, he's not driving. Driver is driving.
Oh.
Sorry. Okay, by the time. Haider, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready, sir.
Please.
Okay. Azhar bhai, आप mention करें कि हज़रत इब्राहिम अलैहिस्सलाम और हज़रत इस्माइल अलैहिस्सलाम raised the foundation of the house. तो मैं इसमें कुछ add करना चाहूँगा. If you go to the Ali Imran ayat number 96, Inna awwala baytan was linnasi lillazi bi bakkata mubarakatan wa hudal lil nas, hudal lil alamin, sorry. The first sanctuary appointed for mankind was that at Bakka, a blessed place, a guidance to the people. So I'll just read a little bit of the tafsir to it says here कि हज़रत इब्राहिम और हज़रत इस्माइल ने rebuild किया. वो पहले से था मक्का मुबारक. Makkah was a secret city on account of the house of Allah, Kaaba, long before Ibrahim was commanded by Allah to go there with his wife Hajira and their son Ismail and rebuild it. तो मक्का तो था और वहां पे हजरत इस्माइल, हजरत इब्राहिम और हजरत इस्माइल ने दुआ की अल्लाह से. मक्का जब बन गया, उसको रीबिल्ड किए कि यहाँ पे एक ऐसे नबी को तू अल्लाह भेज जो इन्हें हिदायत कर सके। तो जब प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम पैदा हुए और he re-established the worship of one true God, overthrew the rules of the pagans, autocracy, and restored the honor of the righteous. So ये ऐड करना था कि मक्का was there और हजरत इब्राहिम और हजरत इस्माइल को अल्लाह ने हुक्म दिया कि उसे रीबिल्ड करने के लिए। तो पता नहीं कितने सालों से, हजारों सालों से किसने बनाया था, लेकिन the place was there before. This is.
Thank you, Bhai. Ahmed, please. Ahmed, are you there? Okay, Rizwan Bhai.
Shaukat Bhai, I'm right now in the car traveling.
Okay.
So
okay. Can I take you a little later? Acha, I'll take you a little later. Rizwan, by the way, you can. Yeah, please.
My understanding, listening to the surah with the अजहर भाई जैसा समझाए और जो मुझे समझ में आया वो यही है कि आई थिंक हमको इंसान को जो है ना अपनी नीयत अच्छी रखना चाहिए और इस सूरह के जितने फायदे हैं पढ़ने में वाजिब नमाज के अंदर जिस तरीके से इमाम सादिक अलैहिस्सलाम फरमाते हैं कि रोज़े महशर इसके ऊपर वो अल्लाह के अजाब से बचेगा और इसके नाम में काफ़ी नेकियां लिखे जाएंगे। तो ये सूरा बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट सूरा है। आई थिंक हमको इसके सारे पॉइंट्स लेके अपनी ज़िंदगी में अप्लाई करना चाहिए कि हमारे अंदर गुरूर ना आए, तकब्बुर ना आए, हर इम्तिहान में हम सब्र से और तहम्मुल से काम लें और गरीबों की मदद करें और अपनी आखिरत और अल्लाह को अपने मद्देनज़र हमेशा रखें। बस यही था।
Thank you, Rizwan. Jabbar, please.
Assalamu everyone again. Just 2 points very quickly. So Ahmad Bhai had asked about, my take on his asking about why the mention of tongue and 2 lips is in the context. If we go a little bit more higher up, the discussion is about people who have been arguing with Prophet Muhammad time and again, saying that we have spent wealth for this, we have spent wealth for that, how much more do you want and whatnot. So that is why Allah says, does he think that no one has power over him? And then he talks about, we have given you tongue and 2 lips. So this power and this giving of tongue and 2 lips, isi power ke सहारे तुम इतना claim कर रहे हो, whereas that claim was not really substantial, but now people would claim that. We can see that in today's world as well, where when someone just spends a very little amount, they would try to market it and show it as though they have done quite a lot of deal. So that is why I think the mention on eyes and tongues and lips is here. The second point is something that I have always believed, and this confirms that. So I'm really happy that I found this one verse today, which is verse number 4. Certainly we have created man to be in distress. So aajkal there are books and many articles come, and nowadays the style of new articles is also very catchy. They say 7 things to do to be happy, and 8 things to do, or whatever, 11 things to do to always be happy and whatnot. So these are all clickbait articles. But now this is just a reinforcement to my belief that everyone is in distress. So now my baby is just about 8 or 9 months old. And I still remember how stressful it was for him to be born, and now he's having teething. So since about 2 or 3 days, I can see how much pain he's going through. And later on in stages, as the man grows, so there will be physical bodily changes, and those are the distress and pains as well. But even apart from that, in life, when you come to a stage where things are sailing smoothly, I think we touched on a few points on this. When things are going smooth, and if you want to do anything new, even that appears to be very smooth and easy. That is Not that it is easy. It is because it is a result of all the pains and troubles and toils that you have taken long back. Like, for example, if a schoolboy comes and goes to the bank and asks for a loan, he will not be encouraged. So when he goes to the education, he gets a good job, he becomes a big member of the society, and then he goes to the loan, the bank will actually be inviting him. So now all the 20 years of hard work that he has done in the past is being paid off. So that is a physical law of the world as well. You know, every action has an equal and opposite reaction or whatever. So the smoothness of now is not just parachute or dropped in on any individual. The second example I would give is everyone has actually traveled in flights. You know, when there is air turbulence, that if you think that is as distress, and after some time to avoid turbulence, the flight actually goes above the clouds. That doesn't mean that distress is not there, but because of some time and a very gradual ascension and using a lot of power and a lot of fuel, the flight has gone above the clouds. So there is the time of toil, of work. So that is distress. Now, when it comes above the clouds, it's not always going to be above the clouds. It has to come down to refuel or to do whatever. And then again, all the physical laws will again be applicable. It has to have a huge power, and it has to use a lot of resources to take flight and go above again. So yeah, I mean, I'm completely satisfied that in this world, there is nothing for man that is easy. He is in distress. Thank you. That's my take.
Okay, thank you, Jabbar. Thanks a lot. Shakib Bhai, please.
Yes, just a few things. The first thing is regarding the title of this surah, the city. I read in the S.B. Mir Ahmad Ali commentary. I'll just read this little bit paragraph out. So the natural phenomenon that the honor, regard, or reverence of a premises is due to its occupant, and not that the occupant receives the grace on account of the premises. So the idea here is it's because of the presence of Rasul Khuda that the city is renowned, rather than the other way around. And I think that applies even today. For example, if you look at the Kaaba today, it's being ruled by the Saudi regime, and they're not receiving any grace on account of the premises. Having such a important place, the most important place in Islam, under their jurisdiction, is not having any influence on their behavior or and so on. Whereas if you look at the opposite extreme, you've got Karbala, which had a very bad name, and because Imam Hussein settled there and was Shaheed there, it's now established such a phenomenal place in Islam, where it has the biggest gathering every year in Ashura, and so. And there are other examples. I mean, Najaf with Imam Ali's Roza being there, and Khum with Bibi Masuma, and so on. So, so that was one thing that I got from this, and it relates to the title of this surah. The other discussion was about the eyes, lips, and tongues, and several people have said some really interesting things. And I was very interested in what Naqibai said about the eyes being seeing unlawful things. You've got the eyelids to close the eyes, and the tongue to avoid saying bad things or misusing it. You've got the lips to close the mouth, and it made me think about what Ahmed Bhai was asking about, why the ears aren't mentioned. And we have two of these ears, but we've got nothing to close the ears apart. We can put our hands over our ears, but you know, and I wondered whether it's because I understand that if you see something you should actually speak up, and we heard about that, and not keep quiet about these things. But with the ears, does that mean if you don't have something to close them, should you be listening to everything in order to make that judgment about what is good and what is evil, and think about it? And then, so I just wondered about that. And then a third thing that came up, which was very interesting to me, is in the Mir Ahmed Ali commentary. There's a lot of reference to the Bible with regard to the hardships that man goes through. And Azarbhai mentioned that in the Bible, it says it's a very narrow path that man has to traverse. And what it reminded me of is the time I was in America, because while I was living there, I noticed everybody talked about Judeo-Christian values with no mention of Islam. And I heard all the time, I'd never heard anyone talk about, the Abrahamic values, which includes Islam. They would only talk about Judeo-Christian. And I think what this is showing is that the references in the Bible, which talk about almost exactly the same thing, shows that the values that Islam purports are no different from what has already been said in the Bible and so on. So it's a deliberate attempt to ignore Islam. And then the last thing I think I had was, and this question came up as well, which is about the steepness of the ascent. And there was a question about what makes it steep. And my take on this was that here, unlike the previous surahs we were covering, where there was talk about the need to curtail your desires and control your desires and so on, and avoid bad deeds. In this surah, we're being told that the steepness of the ascent is more to do with these other acts, which is feeding the hungry and looking after the orphans and freeing the slaves. And so it's the good deeds that, and my take was the steepness of that ascent. The harder thing is this, being part of that and doing those good things, not just talking about them, but actually doing them. And the internal battle, yes, there is that, but that's been covered in the previous surahs. And my take was that it's this additional these elements of doing this good, which makes which adds the steepness. I don't know what others think of that, but okay, I think that's all I had. Thank you. Goodbye. I think that was all I had. Are you there?
Shaukat Bhai? Let's move on. Who is next? Rizwan Bhai, have you had?
Yeah.
Go.
Irshad, please.
Alamdar has.
मेरा हो गया.
Ji, okay. All right.
Ali bhai का है बाकी.
Okay. Ali Bhai, are you there? Do you want to?
Yes, Irshad, please. Irshad, please.
Okay. Okay. Throwing at each other. Okay. I have only one thing which I really there is a statement which I found online, and it kind of really fits in well with what we were discussing about the right hand and all the tribulations that men go through. So I would like to read that. It says, well, these are those, i.e. these persons are those who show strong sincerity in 3 dimensions. That is belief, morals, and action. That makes them to kind of climb the uphill that we were talking about. So, and you can then put that into any context, i.e. belief, morals, and action. So the other thing which I wanted to add was there is a supplication which I would like to read. So if everyone can listen, that would be great. It says, "O Lord, save us from such a painful punishment. O Lord, to pass the uphill roads we have to in front of us is not possible save with your help. Please bestow your help on us." O Lord, please count us among the people of right hand and make us successful to be with the good doers and the righteous in the hereafter. Yeah, that is it. The other bit that we were talking about ears a lot. I think maybe that's the reason why you should have long hair. That's the guarding against or you can have selective hearing. Ali Bhai, I don't know who the next one is.
Yeah.
The other saying about the ears is that Allah Ta'ala has given you two, that if you don't want to retain something you heard, you listen through one ear and you exit it out through the other.
Yeah.
Taking Ishar's point further, I think what, like as I mentioned, this surah mentions about the ones who are fortunate. The fortunate are the ones who believe, are compassionate, and are patient. So how contrast that with how the world looks at somebody who's successful? You know, I think all these three qualities are really non-existent. People who are smart, who have made a lot of money, who've got big houses, who are very, courageous and beautiful and all that. So I think the Quran is really looking at those who are fortunate in a very different light. And these two qualities, apart from faith, which is obviously very important, compassion and mercy and patience, are very hard to acquire and practice on a daily basis. This requires a lot of patience, a lot of challenge, a lot of practice, and a lot of faith, and especially patience. It's not easy in a very fast-moving world. So I'd like to just read a very small sentence here, which says, "The merciful, with a small m, are those unto whom the merciful is merciful."
Mm-hmm.
So the merciful are those upon whom the merciful, i.e. the big M, Allah, is merciful. So be merciful unto those on earth, and he who is in heaven will be merciful unto you. So again, going back to the divine qualities, we need to have that mercy, those divine qualities of compassion, mercy, and patience within us, and practice it with our friends and family and all the people we want to help. So therefore, the Lord up above there is merciful to us. And I think that on that happy note, I'd like to just pass on to Shaukat Bhai.
Thanks a lot, Ali Bhai. Ahmed, are you ready?
Ji, Shaukat Bhai, I'm ready now. I've reached my destination.
Please.
Ji, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. First and foremost, I have to submit absolutely how beautiful this surah is. Absolutely beyond description. The way it is conveying a very deep meaning. This is something which is again beyond any human comprehension. So, and regarding this this mention of struggle, I think I tried recalling or recollecting about anybody who I have met or seen or known who has not gone through struggle in life, and I'm not able to recall. I think everybody has had his share of challenges. Nobody I know, at least, can say that he's not had his share of challenges.
No, there is somebody who's standing in front of you and claiming.
He has to again look closer at his life, and then perhaps things will again come back into the memory. So
no, I'm not confused between problems and hardships, Ahmed. Problems do come, but hardships is, for a long time if you have hardships.
Yeah.
Okay, please continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So, but there is another ayat here in Surah Najm, verse number 39. There is nothing for man except for what he has striven. So this very beautifully dovetails into the mention of struggles in this surah. So essentially, a man creates for himself a destiny based on his own struggles and how he overcomes his challenges and hardships. So that is what we are going through right now, and we have to support each other morally and as much as possible in every way, and advise each other to be patient. I think that is the whole purpose of this sessions of Quran that we have, that we act as moral support to each other, and we encourage each other to be as patient as possible, because I think we have to be in a status of equilibrium while we are going through all these challenges, because people have a tendency of doing something which is not the best when going through the challenges. So I think being in a status of equilibrium is very important. And what is again very amazing about the surah is how it answers questions which readers might get in the previous surahs. Like coming back to the question of Ali Bhai in the last session, where he had mentioned about nafs mutmainna, how does one attain nafs mutmainna status? And again, in this surah, there is very clear mention about how it can be attained. So the Quran also raises the questions in the heart and in our minds, and it also answers them. So it is both questions and answers which are contained in the Quran. We only have to map them, and we have our solutions in our day-to-day life. And there is a very famous saying of Imam Ali, Maula Ali, where he says in Nahjul Balagha, how मैंने अपने टूटते हुए इरादों से अल्लाह को पहचाना है. So we all know what Maula Ali alayhi salam went through in his life, how his struggles were always in the cause of Allah, and he suffered a lot personally, but of course his faith was insurmountable. But him saying this is absolutely profound and very sublime, and this again goes very, very well with the mention of struggles in this surah. And the other thing I would like to mention is how there is perfect accounting and accountability in our lives. We absolutely get what we deserve based on our deeds and actions in this world. So there is going to be no chance of us getting anything more or anything less than we deserve in the hereafter. So that is the confidence, and that is the faith with which we have to lead this life. And we have to remember this all the time when we are doing anything, whether we are doing anything good or not so good. We should always have in mind what is we are sending in store for us, what we are sending forward, and what you are leaving behind, right? So like there is a verse on this previously. So I think we should be very, very clear whenever we are doing anything which is of importance in life. And this mention of steep path, I think again is very divine and very sublime kind of expression of what it takes to really make it. We are going against the normal social norms, right? If suppose israf is so rampant in our society, just imagine somebody spending say about 50 lakhs or 1 crores on his daughter's or son's marriage. If that same money were to be spent on the yatim or on the poor relatives, which have been whose mention is there in the surah, he would have attained, or he would have been benefited much more than the worldly politically correctness that he may have attained by doing what he does. So this is a narrow path, like they say. This is something difficult to identify and difficult to follow, because there are so many perceived challenges. There are so many perceived challenges in going on the straight path. There are only perceived challenges, but from my understanding, these challenges actually don't exist. These are all in our mind. So these challenges of the mind and overcoming them leads us to this narrow, steep path. right? So the obvious is, what is obvious in front of us is not the best path available to us or the one we should be taking. The one which we arrive upon after a deep contemplation and deep what you call thinking, right, is the narrow path. It is almost hidden from normal view, but we need to really strive hard to look for it and to listen to the heart, to the voice of your heart. So this, I think, is a deep learning for all of us that we should understand. And
Am I done?
there is one last thing, Shaukat bhai. Sorry.
Yeah.
There is this mention in earlier in other following surahs how feeding the pilgrims and doing the formalities for Hajj is not on par with fighting in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this again, there are different levels of good, and the best is the one which leads to martyrdom, which leads to dying in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So people, when they do something just for the sake of worldly accolades, they are not doing the best that they are possible or they should be doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot. Abdul?
I have to first of all admit that it's a really challenging task to speak after everybody has spoken almost, especially when the surah is short, like about 20 ayat. I'm not Dr. Shaukat Ali Mirza, who can still speak after everybody has spoken, because he is a scholar. He can certainly contribute, make his unique presentation even after everybody has spoken. However, I have to repeat the same thing what people have said, but I would rather refrain from doing that. And just will briefly touch on 2 points. Firstly, we spoke a lot about the 2 eyes and the lips and why only those lips and tongue and eyes are mentioned. Shakib Bhai has beautifully explained, made his comment on this. I just would like to add one more line there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically challenges or tests people according to their capability and capacity. So here he has given us 2 eyes, which are in our control, 2 lips, which are again in our control. So it's up to us. We can control what to see and what not to see, and what to speak and what not to speak. However, we cannot control what we can. We cannot control our hearing, because if somebody is talking, there's no way we can really shut our ears like we can shut our mouth and eyes. So that's what I think everybody have already spoken about it. And my takeaway on this was the uphill task, the ayat number 12, and it talks about the freeing of slave. I think there was a discussion about it that it may not reflect to this era, but as you know, the Quran has come into existence, and it is for all period of all times, for all age and all generations. So it certainly will apply for us. The way I interpret freeing of slave is like, we all are slaves of some bad habits, some bad sins that we all commit day-to-day life without even realizing it. So perhaps that's what Allah is reflecting here, that before doing all the good jobs of showing the wealth and all, free a slave. That means just by doing good deeds, by charity, by showing generosity with the things that we have been blessed with by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, try to refrain from your bad habits, free all, become, don't be a slave of your bad habits, like don't do sins, hasad, hiras, lalash, takabur. These are all, we are all slaves of all these bad habits. So perhaps Allah is guiding us to release these kind of slaves from us. And the second point which I would like to conclude with is it talks about feeding offal among relatives. This is the part we really ignore most of the time. We are trying to be generous and try to spend and feed the well-fed people, but most of the time we don't look around our relatives, our own relatives. Are they really in good shape or not? And they can't even go anywhere else. It's the primary responsibility. So yeah, otherwise, I mean, if we are doing all things just for the sake of dikhawa, riyakari, then here that's what it says. Your actions should be aligned with your niyyah, and it's all in al-amal bin niyyah. अगर आपकी नियत is pious for seeking pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your actions should be aligned accordingly. Thank you very much. That's what I just wanted to share with you.
Thanks for that. Irshad?
Okay, Irshad.
I've already done it, Shaukat bhai.
Sorry. So it's my
We only have 10 minutes, so
10 minutes है आपके लिए खाली.
I understand, and so far I limit to myself to the given time. Very quickly I'll start. One second. Assalamu alaikum. Look at the first ayat. La uqsimu bihazal balad. See the style. Oh, sorry. I don't know my camera is on, but it's not showing. Okay, I'm there. Look at the first ayat. La Bismillah La uqsimu bihazal balad. The style of presentation, nahi, main qasam khata hu. First he's saying no, then he's saying main qasam khata hu us शहर की. इससे पहले एक एग्जाम्पल ऐसे ही गई है जहां पर पहले नेगेट किया जा रहा है और फिर कसम खाई जा रही है. So that means there was some discussion going on, some news was going on, और अल्लाह को कहना पड़ रहा है कि नहीं, वो नहीं है जो तुम कह रहे हो, बल्कि मैं कहता हूं कसम खाकर. So this is the style once again repeated in the surah, जहां पर पहले नेगेट किया जा रहा है कि नहीं. So one needs to understand कि कौन सी बात है जिसको वहां नेगेट किया जा रहा है, and then he is putting a कसम इस शहर की. Second ayat में I think somebody raised the question कि जब हजरत इब्राहिम हजरत इस्माइल भी थे वहां पर तो इशारा क्यों नहीं होता है. I think if I'm right, I think Azhar bhai has already responded कि यहाँ पर डायरेक्टली एड्रेस किया जा रहा है वंतुम वंता हिल बिहाल बलद. पैगंबर इस्लाम से कहा जा रहा है कि आप के आने की वजह से ने ये हुजूर का इतना बड़ा क्रेडिट हुआ सभी के लिए, बिकॉज मक्का वाज ऑलरेडी देयर, ऐसे मोहतरम शहर एहतराम वाला, इवन दो उसके अंदर बुत भी थे, तमाम मुनाफिकीन भी थे, काफिर भी थे, लेकिन उस वक्त तक का मक्का काबिल कसम नहीं हुआ. लेकिन कुरान कहता है कि ऐ पैगंबर जब आपके पैर आपके कदम वहां पहुंच गए तो आपके पहुंचने से उस शहर में इतनी इज्जत पैदा हो गई कि वो अल्लाह की नजर में काबिल कसम हो गया. तीसरी आयत इज अ बिट इम्पोर्टेंट फॉर अस, व वालिदिम व मा वलद. इसको लोगों ने अलग अलग तरीके से ट्रांसलेट किया है, उस बाप की कसम और उसके बेटे की कसम. In very simple words, most of the Mufassirin have referred this to Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail, as also mentioned by Azhar bhai. कुछ लोगों ने आगे बढ़कर एक कदम उठाया, बोला कि नहीं, सबसे बड़े बाप यानी हजरत आदम और उनकी औलाद यानी आने वाली औलाद की कसम. इन्होंने मौलाना अबुल आला मौदूदी ने कुछ इस तरीके से ट्रांसलेट किया है कि उस बाप की कसम और जो औलाद आई है या आने वाली है. विथ ड्यू रिस्पेक्ट टू अल्लामा मौदूदी, इस तरीके का ट्रांसलेट करके शायद थोड़ा सा फंस गए कि उन्होंने एग्जैक्टली रेफर नहीं किया कि वो बाप कौन है और वो औलाद कौन है. और अगर किसी ने हजरत आदम को रेफर किया है तो कुछ उलमा ने इसको इस तरीके से काउंटर किया है कि फर्स्ट थिंग इट इज डिसाइडेड कि ये आयत पैगंबर को एड्रेस नहीं कर रही है, बल्कि पैगंबर से बोला जा रहा है ये कहकर कि उस बाप की कसम और आने वाली औलाद की कसम. अगर हजरत तो पहला काउंटर ये है कि जब बात पैगंबर से हो रही है, मक्के में हो रही है, उसके पहले की आयत बता रही है कि ये मक्का इसलिए काबिल एहतराम बन गया बिकॉज यू हैव पुट योर फुट देयर. तो why you are going to Hazrat Adam? Why you are crossing so many Anbiya to go to Hazrat Ibrahim? क्यों नहीं उसी हम जमाने की बात करें जिस जमाने में ये आयत नाजिल हो रही है, जिस जमाने में पैगंबर इस्लाम के मक्का पहुंचने पर वो इतना काबिल एहतराम हो गया कि अल्लाह ने मक्के को काबिल खसम बनाया है. And definitely this ayat is not referring to Prophet Muhammad. Now, if you refer to Hazrat Adam और उनके बच्चों की कसम, तो काउंटर ये है कि अल्लाह ने अभी तक हमारी खुद नॉलेज में जो 30वां पारा स्टार्ट होने के बाद से अभी तक जितने कसमों को हमने देखा है, whenever अल्लाह put a vouch और कसम, तो बहुत बड़ी बड़ी चीजों की कसम खाई गई है. अगर हजरत आदम और उनके बच्चों की कसम खाई जाएगी तो औलाद आदम में सब नेक नहीं है. उसमें कातिल भी है, मकतूल भी है, जालिम भी है, मजलूम भी है, सही भी है, झूठे भी हैं. तो ये कैसे हो सकता है कि अल्लाह हजरत आदम का नाम लेकर उनकी औलाद की कसम खाए, वो औलाद जिसमें झूठे भी रहेंगे, जालिम भी रहेंगे, कातिल भी रहेंगे? इट कैन नॉट बी हजरत आदम, इट कैन नॉट बी हजरत इब्राहिम, क्योंकि हजरत इब्राहिम ने जब दुआ की कि मेरी औलाद में ऐसा बना दे, तो उसमें नबूवत को कायम कर दे, तो अल्लाह ने कहा कि हम तुम्हारी बात को सुनते हैं, मगर ये ओहदा जालिमीन तक नहीं पहुंचेगा. इट इज एन डायरेक्ट इंडिकेशन के हजरत इब्राहिम की औलाद में जालिम होंगे, मगर वो खलीफा नहीं बनेंगे, इमाम नहीं बनेंगे. तो ये कैसे हो सकता है कि हजरत इब्राहिम को रेफर किया जाए जबकि अल्लाह खुद हिंट कर रहा है कि आपकी औलाद में जालिम भी होंगे? हजरत याकूब की कसम नहीं हो सकती, इसलिए कि अगर उनको 12 बेटे थे तो 11 बेटे वो थे जिन्होंने नबी को कत्ल करने की कोशिश की या नबी को तकलीफ पहुंचाई. तो अल्लाह हजरत याकूब की कसम खा ले वो तो ठीक है, मगर ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है कि उनके बेटों की कसम खाए वो बेटे जो आने वाले नबी को कत्ल करने की कोशिश करें, मारने की कोशिश करें और अपने बाप को तकलीफ दिया है? हजरत नूह की कसम हो सकती है, मगर हजरत नूह की औलाद की कसम नहीं हो सकती है. तो लाइक दैट इफ यू गो फ्रॉम हजरत आदम टिल मोस्ट ऑफ द अंबिया, तो हर जगह आपको मिलेगा कि उनकी औलाद मुकम्मल तौर पर मासूम नहीं थी कि अल्लाह उस पूरी औलाद की कसम खाए. तो यहाँ एक फैक्टर आ रहा है कि जब जिस चीज की कसम खाई जाती है उसका पाक और मुतहर होना जरूरी है. तो उन्होंने फरमाया कि अगर उस दौर में जब ये आयतें नाज़िल हुई थी, पैगंबर इस्लाम से एड्रेस किया जा रहा है, वो बाप की कसम और उसके बाद के आने वाली औलाद की कसम जो क़यामत तक आएगी, और ऐसी आएगी कि ना उसमें कोई झूठा होगा, ना जालिम होगा, ना कातिल होगा, सिवाय हजरत अबू तालिब और उनकी औलाद के और कोई मिसाल हजरत आदम से लेकर पैगंबर इस्लाम तक नहीं मिल सकती. इफ वी लुक इनटू हिस्टोरिकली, तो अगर यहाँ ये बात कही गई है वो वालिदिन व वलद, तो इट वाज काउंटर्ड लॉजिकली कि हजरत आदम नहीं हो सकते, हजरत नूह नहीं हो सकते, हजरत इब्राहिम नहीं हो सकते, हजरत अय्यूब नहीं हो सकते. इट हैज टू बी समबडी कि जो इतना पाक हो कि वो काबिल कसम हो, और फिर उसकी आने वाली औलाद इस काबिल हो कि उसमें कोई कातिल, गुनहगार, मुशरिक, मुनाफिक, झूठ बोलने वाला, जालिम ना हो. तो ये 12 आइम्मा के अलावा ये मिसाल हमको नहीं मिल सकती है. बहुत तेजी से, और 6 मिनट बाकी मेरे पास, नो सॉरी 3 मिनट बाकी है. Now Ahmed has raised a question, actually I really wish to speak on that, कि क्यों सिर्फ आंखों की और जुबान की कसम, ज़बान के लिए इम्पोर्टेंस दिखाई गई है और क्यों नहीं कानों का जिक्र किया गया है? तो पहले तो मैं कोट कर दूं कि सूरह दहर की एक आयत है. इफ आई रीड द उर्दू ट्रांसलेशन, इट रीड्स लाइक दिस: हमने इंसान को एक मखलूत नुतफे से पैदा किया ताकि उसका इम्तिहान ले, इस गर्ज के लिए हमने उसे सुनने और देखने वाला बनाया, सुनने और देखने वाला बनाया. ना इन दिस आयत सुनने की बात नहीं है, जुबान का जिक्र है और आंख का जिक्र है. Probably these two things are the things by which the insan can do the गुनाह very easily, और इनसे बचने का तरीका अल्लाह ने जो हमको दिया है, that is also very easy. इंसान के जिस्म पर जो आंख दी गई है, it is not only for the purpose of saying, if you can think of any object which is, suppose अगर इंसान को पूरा जिस्म दे दिया गया होता और आंख दे दी गई होती, क्या होता? In other words, we put it like this, वो अल्लाह की किसी भी अजायबात को देखने के काबिल ही नहीं होता. So it is not that कि आंख हमको एक organ के तौर पर दी गई है. It is the gift of Allah in the form of eye, through which we can see the total universe. देखने में एक छोटी सी एक 1.5 इंच की आंख होती है, but we are able to see with this eye the entire universe, the entire ajabat of the Almighty Allah. Similarly, अगर इंसान को आंख दे दी गई होती मगर उसे जुबान नहीं दी गई होती, no matter whatever he is seeing, he could not have expressed that, he could not have done tabligh, he could not have even communicate. तो ये ब्यूटी जबान और आंखों की कानून से बहुत ज्यादा है जो अल्लाह ने दी है. नो डाउट हर ऑर्गन का अपनी लेवल पे एक इम्पोर्टेंस है, लेकिन जितनी आसानी के साथ इंसान की बनावट और उसके चेहरे की खूबसूरती को बनाने के लिए अल्लाह ने आंख और होंठ फिट किए हैं. The horn is not only to protect the zaban, but at the same time they are responsible to pronounce several alphabets and letters. आसान तरीन तरीके से इंसान को गुनाहों से बचाने के लिए पैगंबर इस्लाम की एक हदीस है. I am just reading the Urdu translation. ऐ औलाद आदम, it is not referred to मुसलमान, it is not referred to मुमिनीन. The word says यब्ना आदम, ऐ औलाद आदम, अगर तेरी जुबान तुझे किसी फेले हराम पर उभारना चाहे तो मैंने उसे रोकने के लिए 2 होंठ तेरे इख्तियार में दे दिए, बस तू कुछ मत कर, होठों को बंद कर ले. एंड एट द सेम टाइम अगर तेरी आंख तुझे हराम की तरफ ले जाना चाहती है तो मैंने पलकें तेरे इख्तियार में दे दी हैं, तू उन्हें बंद कर ले. I was just, when Ahmed was raising a question, I was just wondering why there are covers on eyes which has been referred in this surah, why there is a reference to Zaban जिसको बंद करने के लिए अल्लाह ने होठ दिए हैं. कान नो डाउट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, बट इसके ऊपर कोई ऐसा लेयर हमें नहीं दिया गया कि जिसको ऑटोमेटिकली शट डाउन करने से हम इंसान की बोले जाने बात को अपने आप को हम रोक सकते हैं. टाइम इज अप, 2 minutes I have crossed. एक आखिरी बात करता हूँ, मेरे भी पेशेंस की तारीफ करिए कि सबको सुनता हूँ मगर मुझे बोलने का टाइम नहीं मिलता है. जस्ट 2 छोटी सी हदीसें. जो शख्स किसी भूखे को पेट भरकर खाना खिलाए, खुदा उसको क़यामत में जन्नत के दरवाजों में से उस दरवाजे से दाखिल करेगा जिससे कोई दूसरा दाखिल नहीं हो सकता. That means what? खाना खिलाने वाला will get an exclusive door to enter into paradise. Thanks to the Al-Nur group who has taken the initiative to feed the poor in your city. May God give this tawfiq to all others. And just to add to Ali Bhai's addition, कि अल्लाह उन पर रहम करता है जो दूसरों पर रहम करते हैं और अल्लाह उन पर रहम नहीं करता जो दूसरों पर रहम नहीं करते. ऐ इंसान तू जमीन वालों पर रहम कर ताकि आसमान वाला तुझ पर रहम करे. Yes, these are all taken lessons for all of us. I pray Almighty Allah कि हमको तौफीक दे, हौसला दे, मौका दे कि जो आयतों का हमने इस सूरे में जिक्र किया है वो क्वालिटीज हम भी अपने अंदर पैदा कर सकें इंशाअल्लाह. टाइम इज अप.
Thank you, Shaukat bhai.
Great.
Let's close the session. I think next week is myself, so inshallah. Thank you everyone for calling in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Khuda Hafiz.